Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that is teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Nancy Servigna. I think I did all right on that.
You did great.
She is a customer order fulfillment manager, but it wasn't always that way. I doubt she grew up wanting to become that, but she got a degree in chemical engineering and she also has an MBA. But I'm really curious as to how someone with an engineering degree ends up in customer order fulfillment. I'm also curious what were the steps in between getting that degree and now doing what she does, and then also as a manager of people, what kind of what are her takes on leadership? So I'm really looking forward to getting into this interview. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Nancy.
Thank you so much, Neil, for the invitation. I'm super honored and excited to, share my 2 cents on my experience, my background, and how can I help other technical professionals to get there.
Wonderful. So I mentioned that you got a degree in chemical engineering. What was the motivation to get that degree?
So I am originally born and raised in Venezuela. That's where you get the accent from. Moved to the US when I was 26 to go to grad school. And my degree was influenced by my dad. He is also an engineer. And also I grew up in a country where technical people has a lot of respect and a lot of opportunities. So when I was deciding, right, in high school, where and what do I wanted to do next, I knew that I was really good at math. I knew that I was really good in science in general, but also I saw the career path for both my parents. And that was truly an inspiration to decide, technical roles have great opportunities and will prepare you to even pivot into something different if that's what you want to do down the line, which is actually where I ended up as well.
You know, I don't think a lot of people realize how versatile an engineering degree actually is, because I've done a number of these interviews at this point, and it's been so interesting to learn people that got these engineering degrees ended up in places that you wouldn't necessarily think they would. But there they are, and maybe perhaps you're one of those people too. So I also mentioned in the intro that you got an MBA. So what was the motivation to get that degree?
So when I started my career back in Venezuela, I was doing quality assurance. So I was the chief of quality assurance for a petrochemical company. And the company leadership wanted to move me to the strategic side, doing business development, strategic planning, and all that. And one of the comments that I got from my leadership is, gosh, it would be great if you had the business acumen. And I said to them, don't worry, I'll go get an MBA and I'll be back. Long story short, I didn't go back. My country political and economical situation started getting worse. And I actually found the land of opportunities and got a really good opportunity to stay in the US. And that's exactly what I did. But I was getting the MBA just to supplement that technical skill set that I already had with 5 years of experience in the engineering business, in a petrochemical and manufacturing facility, with the business acumen to be a more well-rounded professional.
So so it sounds like you started off in engineering and then you moved into these more business oriented roles. Was that always the goal, or was it somebody that asked you to make that switch?
It wasn't the role. I think it's a natural progression for engineering professionals. You do have an option to stay technical and remain on that side, but most of us have the opportunities to grow on the management side. And the MBA, it's going to be a good supplement regardless if you want to stay even technical, but you want to continue to grow, manage people, to your point, how to become a good leader, how to read a P&L, how to make business decisions that will impact bottom and top line of the business. You need to have that language and you need to have that education to supplement all the great technical acumen that you have from your background and also your experience. My goal wasn't necessarily go get an MBA and switch. It was just the way you presented. The leadership recommended that I got that so I could go back and work on that more strategic planning side. And then since then, honestly, kind of by chance, kind of by choice, I ended up working in supply chain. And that's what I have been doing the last 10, 12 years of my career. And I absolutely love it. So it's still within the engineering space, right? Because an industrial engineering, a production engineer does a lot of supply planning, supply chain management roles, but then I still have my engineering with the chemical background to move into the supply chain space.
You mentioned earlier that you started off in petrochemical, and from what I understand, that's pretty popular in Venezuela. But then I'm not sure that it doesn't sound like you necessarily stayed in petrochemical. Was that a choice that you made, or just kind of how the how things worked out for you?
It's how things work out. It wasn't a choice. I started in Venezuela in petrochemical because, to your point, you're absolutely right. Venezuela is an oil country, and I had a wonderful opportunity to work for a private company that competed from a reputation with the public company at the time. And it was a fantastic opportunity because it was really close to my hometown, so I could commute every day. And it was a great opportunity to get a lot of foundation and learning in the technical aspect. When I moved to the US, I didn't move to Houston or Texas, which is mostly the oil places in the US. Denver also has a really good hub for oil and gas. I moved to Atlanta, and I moved to Atlanta because that's where I knew people, and I wanted to move to a place where I had somebody that could help me get started, from finding the schools that were the best to apply to, or help me navigate the new culture, the new place, the new environment. And being in Atlanta, petrochemical wasn't necessarily an option. And I started expanding my horizon, right? Like, what are other opportunities that are out there that could be interesting, that I could tap into and see if I have a passion for. I worked for a little bit in a engineering consultant firm, loved it, lived in Chile with that company for 2 years. So it was a great opportunity to continue to work on the cultural aspect and expanding again that global mindset. But then after that, I worked for a beer company, and I started my full supply chain career for CPG companies. And since then, honestly, I don't look back. If I need to look for another job, it will very likely be in a CPG company, because I love the fast pace. I love how it's a product that you can see and recognize in the market, and also that it's making a difference in people's life in whatever the space that is.
All right. That certainly makes sense. You mentioned supply chain a number of times. For those of us that perhaps don't know what supply chain entails, what is supply chain?
So it's a wide variety of roles, right? So it's what works with sales and at the same time operations to bring a product to market. So you work with materials planning people that will determine how much do you need based on demand set signals for production. You coordinate the logistics. So that's another element of the supply chain. You do production planning, you do short-term, long-term. You do your sales and operation planning and execution. You plan production short term. Again, tying it to that demand signal that you get from the market or from your salespeople, to be able to determine then how much do you need to produce and when, and then all the logistics related with inventory management, shipment to customers, and the last piece is the customer service piece, right? How do you make sure that you're delivering the product on time, in full, complying with whatever your customer requirements are, and then being that tie back in case there's any issues or quality problems or whatever that might be, to bring it back to the organization and work on what your solution plan is, but more importantly, continuous improvement, how you avoid that from happening again. So it's a wide variety of roles. Different companies align different roles within the supply chain organization. Some of them include the material planning, some of them include part of the operation, some of them even include demand as well. But in a nutshell, is all the activities that happen between the sales and the actual production of a product.
Okay. It sounds like, well, based on what you said, you can there's certain things that could be included in supply chain that may not be included in supply chain at other companies. Hopefully it's never an issue where you go to a company and they say this is supply chain, you're thinking this isn't supply chain. What do they want me doing this for? But I guess
yeah, at the end of the day, it's like how you label the whole realm. But you get very specific on which space in that realm you play, right? Like I have colleagues that have been in transportation logistics space and they're experts in that space. And it doesn't matter how the company calls it, you are part of that group, regardless if they see it in the supply chain organization or in the operation organization, or if they have a transportation separate organization, right? It depends also on what the product is and what you're offering to the customer. For me, I have working customer service. It was part of the supply chain organization. Long-term planning, it was part of the supply chain organization. Short-term planning, it was also part of supply chain. What I work right now, they don't call it supply chain, they call it IBP, which is integrated business planning, but it's the same thing, right? And then right now I do customer fulfillment. So what I do is I work with our customers to make sure that we receive their orders, plan production, plan inventory, and then make sure that the logistics team deliver that product when we said we will give it to the customer. And then if the customer has any issues or praise, then they usually come to me to work those out in a positive or negative way, whatever that might be. And then we solve that for the customer. So I'm that liaison from a technical point of view. That is not sales, because sales role is to close the deal, to present the product, to highlight the benefits of it. And then I coming from a technical point of view to say, okay, well, that was your issue. This is how can we solve it? Or you're extremely excited about the product. How can we get the next order in the line?
All right, nice. I mentioned earlier in the intro that you're a manager, so you're a leader, I'm sure, of some type at your organization. What is something about leading others that you didn't anticipate before you actually became one?
So I have been a people's leader for quite a bit. Actually, I started my career and I had to lead people, and I was only 23, and some of my direct reports were working for that company 25 years. So they were even working there longer than I have been alive, right? So it was puzzling for me. How am I going to lead these people that have all the experience that I actually don't have? So it's very humbling, number one, but also it brings you down to earth in the sense of if you're there, it's for a reason, it's because you have something to add. So be humble enough to learn what you don't know, to be able to recognize that you don't know what you don't know, that you're there to learn from there as much as you're there to leading them into making good business decisions, but also be transparent, right? Like have the line of communication to recognize when you don't have all the answers and you need to go back and get them, or be transparent to say, I see your point, but I cannot make a decision at this point. Let's table this conversation. I'll bring it back to my leadership and come back to you, right? And then build a trust. To me, the most important element in a relationship, regardless of it is professional, personal, direct report to manager, is the trust. If you know as my employee that you can trust me, then you know that I'm going to have your best interest at heart. But then I also need to know that I can trust you as an employee to do your best every time. So probably the thing that I didn't know is that leading people it's very dependent on the situation and the personality, right? Nobody is exactly the same, and no situation is always the same. So you have to be able to flex and adapt not only your leadership style, but also how do you approach a problem or a situation, depending on who you're dealing with. Some people just want to be heard, and you just have to understand that. They don't want you to provide a solution. They just want you to listen, and that's all you need to do. Some people want you to come with solutions, and you need to be able to recognize and connect with your people to understand what their needs are, so you can be an effective leader in leading them into finding the way themselves to continue to grow.
When you were talking about some people just want to be heard and don't necessarily want a solution, that kind of made me chuckle. I guess maybe a way around that is when they start to talk, you stop them real quick and say, is this something you want a solution for, or is this something you just want to talk, you just want to vent about?
and that's a great, again, if you have the trust, that person will tell you, I just want to vent. And it's like, vent away, my friend. Or no, I actually need you to help me with this. And I also like, because I'm very goal oriented, I like to define what are we getting from this conversation? And then close with like 2 items that are action items, either for you or for me, on how we're reconnecting on this issue again to make sure that we're solving it, if that's what it is, right? If you just want to be heard, I'll be sitting there attentively, looking at you and letting you vent. And then when you're done, I'll be, is there any action item for me? No, I just wanted to vent. Fantastic. I'm here for you.
Oh man, this is
As long as you're not venting about me to myself, that can be tough. I'm not gonna lie.
This is the reason I never wanted to manage people. It's just the idea of somebody coming to my office just to vent with no action item for me at all, nothing for me really to do, just to sit there and take my time for you just to complain about something. Oh man, God bless people like you who are willing to take on that type of work. Oh man.
Well, at the same time, it's very fulfilling, right? When you see talent that you can recognize they're really good and you see them grow, it's just a beautiful feeling that I get in my heart of, yes, I help you to realize your full potential and you're like shining like the stars. It's something that fills my cup. So you just have to find what it is. You're probably not managing people, but you're helping a lot of people with your program to give them the skills, to give them the confidence, to find the tools. So you're still helping people in a different way. God bless people like you. So, it goes both ways.
All right, I'll certainly take that, and hopefully the people that you're helping in improving their potential, what that actually means is maybe I don't have to vent to people as much. maybe I can figure some things out myself without the venting. That'd be filling that potential. Nancy, when I first started this podcast, this YouTube channel, it had to do with my own struggles giving presentations in front of people, and I got better at it over time because I saw the benefit of doing so. When did you see the benefit of getting better? Or I guess, when did you realize that getting better at presenting or public speaking in general could be of use to you?
So I realized that in my first role, and I realized it because when I was working for the petrochemical company, I was leading the certification for ISO 9000, which is quality, and I had to present to the senior leadership team. I had to present to the company president, and again, I was really young. I was 23, and being put in a situation where I had to go and present the technical, the challenges, the budget, the tasks, the project plan was not only scary, but also intimidating, because I'm talking to people that have a lot of knowledge, that will ask difficult questions if things are not going the right way. So that's when I said to myself, you need to know this, you need to be really good at this. I felt that I got really better at it, and it's just practice, right? Like, you get better with practice. You can take courses, you can do trainings, you can prepare yourself and get some of the technical knowledge to encourage yourself to be better at it, but it's just 100% practice. And I don't know if that was your experience. That's what it was for me. However, I had to start from the ground again when I moved to the US, and I realized that I was speaking to a different audience with a different culture that doesn't necessarily connect the same way, but also in a different language. So I still struggle with the accent piece and how I say things and how people sometimes feel that I sound funny. And I just got to a point where I said to myself, if I'm being invited to speak at a place, but if I have to do it because of work and I am the one tasked with the task, it's because I have something important to bring to the table. So I don't let that imposter syndrome to get to my head and tell myself, you know what, you might have a funny accent. We actually all do. You might say things in a funny way. Well, that's the way you speak. And as long as you can get the point across, and as long as you have something valuable to bring to the table, you need to be heard, and you need to use your voice to do that. So I think the realization came early in their career, and I think having the ability to realize how important it is to communicate points across, influence people, decision makers, have even propelled that need to continue to hone into that skill to excel at my different jobs.
Well, I'm glad it came to you early on. That wasn't the case for me. It was my second job, and I was forced into this position to have to give presentations in front of management. And I noticed that I would get questions afterwards, after the presentations from the management types that I thought I'd answered during the presentation, but because I didn't put it in such a way that they can understand, now I'm getting these questions afterwards, and I'm speaking in English. That's my only language. That's the language I got. So the fact that you actually had to come to a new country and speak in your non-native language, that's, man, kudos to you too. I'm sure I'd be wetting the bed if I had to go to Venezuela and speak in Spanish.
It is definitely a challenge, right? But also, I think I had really good mentors along the way. So when I was starting here, I will meet with somebody that I trust and that knew my audience. And I think that's a great tip, right? Because you might be a great public speaker, but to your point, if you don't know your audience and what kind of questions they're going to ask, how they think, and how they digest information, your presentation might be outstanding, but it might not speak to them. So I had a really good group of people that I could tap into and say, hey, I'm presenting to this. This is my audience. This is the goal of the presentation. This is what I'm delivering. What do you think about it? What do you think are the questions? So I could prepare myself in advance because I'm a planner. I love to be prepared. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get questions anyway, right? Sometimes it's just the information was there, but their mind wandered for 1 second, and then you have to repeat yourself, and you have to know that. Sometimes is you said it in a way that didn't click, and you have to say it a second time so it clicked. So you have to be open and flexible to present the same information sometimes in different ways to make sure that you're connecting with your audience and that is clicking in their brains.
Yeah, I'm a planner when it comes to giving presentations too. I have a friend that gives me a hard time about it. He more when it comes to his presentations, he kind of likes to wing it. But I noticed that there's definitely a difference between planning it and winging it, because when you wing it, it comes out as it comes out, and it doesn't necessarily come out in the best way. At least when you plan, you can figure that out. Especially if you're talking to an audience that doesn't know as much about your topic as you do. You really want to be mindful of presenting the information in a way, well, firstly, they'll take in, and then the way it just makes sense. So I was already a mess before presentations when I first started giving them. And I think one of the big reasons is because I didn't practice. I didn't prepare anything. Well, I did prepare slides, and I got up there and I read slides. But if you really want to engage people, you want to get people to listen, that's not the best way. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I get questions afterwards anyway. So apparently the presentation or the preparation that I was doing wasn't good enough.
I like to plan too, and I like to rehearse what I'm saying. It sounds silly, but I like to do it also in front of a mirror so I can see my delivery, so I can see how I look, so I can see if I'm standing, right? Like, where am I standing? Am I standing tall enough? We Latinos use our hands a lot. Am I going beyond and too much into speaking like this and looking frantic? Or am I using it just to deliver the point, but staying and remaining calm and transmitting, also projecting that calmness, if that's the topic. I think, and this is a funny story, but another thing that helped me with the public speaking is I became a certified yoga instructor, and I put myself in that situation to challenge myself even more. And I started teaching classes, and I'm like, if I can do this with sound blasting music, jumping around a room and keeping my lung capacity to be able to speak for an hour, and I can be successful at keeping my students safe in their bodies and in their space, I got this. And that was like an extracurricular activity that I tap into because it was a passion, but at the same time, I saw it as an opportunity to help me get more confident commanding a room, giving presentations, speaking publicly, and also learning how to read my audience and be able to tailor it to their needs.
Before the pandemic, I used to do hot yoga. I used to love it so much. But man, again, kudos to those instructors. They're able to be in that hot ass room for a good hour and a half, however long it is. Because man, by the time those classes were done, I was drenched. It was just dripping all over. But man, I certainly missed that. That's
Well, you should go back to it.
Yeah.
So I actually own a yoga studio now. It is hot yoga. It's not Bikram, which is a specific style, but it's hot. And the hot sequence is actually my favorite to teach. So you should go back to it. It's good for the heart, for the soul, for the mind, for the body, and the spirits. So I will preach to that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of yoga. In fact, every Sunday I do yin yoga. So
Very good.
I start my day off that way. It's helpful because from Monday to Saturday, that's when I do more strenuous things. So then on the Sunday, that's when I do all my stretching. And
Beautiful.
what I love about yin is that you have to hold them stretches for a while. And sometimes you just be it's difficult sometimes because you actually have to think about nothing. Because when you're laying in those stretches for so long, you're probably thinking about all other types of things. But to have your mind go blank and just focus on the stretch, that's actually more difficult than perhaps people think it might be.
It is. It is actually very difficult to stay present in your body and in your practice. And it's a skill that is really hard to master. So if you're able to put your mind blank, even for a few breaths, congratulations to you, because that's not an easy task to achieve.
Yeah, no question. But I've gotten really good at it now. So now when I'm doing the yin yoga, I'm really not thinking about anything except the stretches. So
very good.
Kudos to me for that. Yeah, I'm pretty good. So when it comes to anybody who's listening or watching this conversation, Nancy, what would your number one tip be if they wanted to become more effective at giving presentations or public speaking in general?
Find training. Learn, like find helpful tips. What are the things that can help you? Because we all might have a gap, right? And my gap might not be your gap. It might not be our audience gap. So be able to identify what is that you need to be working on to become effective. Is it the practice? Is it the confidence? Is it the speed of your speaking? Is it the emulation of your words? Is it more of like preparing and learning how to connect with people? So figure where your gap lies and then find trainings. And there's a lot of opportunities right now to do free. LinkedIn has a lot of resources. YouTube has a lot of videos. People like you that have channels, podcasts, like find tips that will help you close the gap and then practice. It will be uncomfortable. It will be weird. It will be awkward. But the only way that you can get better is with practice. It is a skill that you need to master, and you master it with practice. When at work or at school, there's an opportunity to present, volunteer yourself, put yourself in the uncomfortable situation and go out of your comfort zone so you can grow the skill. And it might suck at the beginning and it might feel awful and you might feel like a failure, but you're not. You are stepping up and you're putting yourself out there. In a very short amount of time, you will be able to excel above everybody else that didn't want to put themselves in that situation. The last piece is be confident on the fact that when you're presenting something, you are the SME. You are the subject matter expert. You are the one that knows the most. So don't let the questions trip you over. And if sometimes they ask you something you don't know, again, be humble enough to say, you know what, I actually don't know the answer, but I'll find it, and make sure that you connect back with that person and provide that answer, because that will give you credibility as well. Those will be my tips.
All right. I asked for one tip, you gave multiple. Thank you for that. See, but that's why you're the boss. You get to make the rules. That's how that goes. If you were the person reporting to somebody, they'd be like, "That's not what I asked for, Nancy. I asked you for one, and now you're giving me all these other ones. What's wrong with you? You didn't listen to me."
I know. That's right. You're absolutely right.
And now I'm going to dock you on your performance review just for that. No promotion for you.
Exactly. You need to practice your active listening. I asked for one, and you gave me 5. Narrow it down and come back with one. Yes.
Yeah. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much, Nancy, for being a guest. How can people get in touch with you?
Of course. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to, talk to your audience and talk to you. It was a lot of fun. How can they get in touch with me? So I am on LinkedIn. My name and last name, Nancy Servigna. They can find me. Happy to connect. If they actually reference that they are connecting because of Teach the Geek, that will be great, because I usually get really skeptical about who am I connecting with and why do I want to connect with that specific person. But I'm open there and happy to take the conversation offline. I'm also in every other social media platform available, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, name and last name, you can find me. And super excited to continue to connect with people and offer my 2 cents on what has worked for me, understanding that my experience is different and it's not the same for everybody, but there's always something we can learn from somebody else. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to connecting with your audience and with you, and sharing my experience in my life.
Wonderful. Well, everyone, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson, founder of Teach the Geek, and you can learn more about it at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you so much.